I worked night shifts at a small community hospital. I was 30 years old and thought I was used to everything. But that 1 week changed me. I still can't shake what happened. The night started normally. I walked through the quiet halls, listening to the beeping of machines and feeling the chill of the air. I went through my routine, restocking supplies and checking on patients. But then, I was called to room 217. They said a patient was unresponsive. I thought it was just another night. When I reached the room, I hesitated at the doorknob. It felt strangely cold, almost like someone else had just touched it. I pushed the door open, expecting to see a patient lying in bed. Instead, it was empty. My heart sank. I blinked, trying to comprehend this. The bed was made, and the window was wide open. A rush of unease coursed through me. I left the room and asked my colleagues about the patient. They looked confused. 217. Nobody's in there, one said. I felt like they thought I was losing it. I shrugged it off as fatigued. A few hours later, I was in the supply room. I was busy organizing supplies when I felt a prickling sensation on my neck. It was like someone was watching me. I turned quickly but saw only shadows. Then I heard a soft, unsettling laugh echoing from the hallway. I couldn't tell where it came from. I hesitated, peeking into the dark corridor. Nothing. Just silence. I returned to work but still felt eyes on me. Items I had just put in their places were gone when I checked again. Scissors were now in drawers they hadn't been in before. Syringes appeared on different shelves. I started to feel like something was off, like someone or something was messing with me. Then it got weirder. I found myself passing room 217 again. The door was slightly ajar. Curiosity pulled me in. When I peeked inside, there was something. I saw a figure, but it faded away as I stepped closer. Nothing but shadows playing tricks on my tired eyes. I stumbled back, my heart racing. Had I really seen someone? I whispered, "Is anyone there?" All I got was silence. But then, a soft voice echoed back, mimicking me. "Is anyone there?" It sent chills down my spine. I felt like I was losing it. Just then, I heard someone calling my name down the hall. I turned to see my supervisor. They looked concerned. "Are you all right?" they asked. I could tell they felt something too but didn't want to say it. I just nodded. I wasn't sure how to explain what had happened. That I still think about those nights. I can't make sense of any of it. I didn't find answers. I was left with memories that haunt me. The empty bed, the shadowy figure, the echoing voice, they all linger in my mind. I wish I could forget, but I know I never will. The next night, I walked into the hospital feeling a knot in my stomach. I kept thinking about room 217. Each step toward the nursing station felt heavier than the last. My heart raced as I recalled the eerie events of the previous shift. I tried to shake it off, focusing on my tasks. I stocked shelves and checked on patients, but I was always aware of that room lurking at the end of the hall. When my supervisor asked me to take a quick inventory in the supply room, I was grateful for the distraction. While counting bandages, I felt that same unsettling gaze on me. I turned quickly, expecting to find someone behind me, but there was nothing. My breath quickened. I finished my count and stepped back into the hall. That's when I heard it again, a soft laugh. It felt closer this time, echoing off the walls. I froze. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice wavering. I glanced down the corridor, but nobody was around. The laughter faded into silence. That I took a deep breath. "Get it together," I told myself. As I resumed my rounds, I couldn't shake the feeling that the hospital was somehow alive, watching me. Just when I thought I would be rid of my fears, a chill swept through me as I approached 217 once again. The door was wide open. My pulse quickened as I stepped inside. The room seemed darker than before. I scanned the empty bed, but my eyes were drawn to the far corner. Something was there just out of the light. It looked like a figure, but the moment I blinked, it was gone. Panic surged through me. "Stop it," I whispered. But the silence was deafening. This time I didn't speak out loud, fear tightened my throat. I took a cautious step forward, and the shadows danced, flickering at the edges of my vision. I turned to leave, feeling a rush of adrenaline. But as I reached for the doorknob, someone whispered my name, a soft, breathy sound creeping in from behind. I whirled around, heart pounding. "Who's there?" "Nothing. Just shadows." I backed away, nearly tripping over my feet in my haste. I got out into the hallway and slammed the door shut, leaning against it. I couldn't breathe. My supervisor found me moments later, eyebrows knitted in concern. "What happened?" They searched my face, but I couldn't find the words. "I just need a moment," I mumbled, too shaken to explain, the unease settling deep in my bones. "Okay, take a break," they said, half convinced I was just tired. I nodded, but as I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the hospital wanted to reveal something dark and hidden. I stumbled into the break room. I needed to regain my composure, but when I glanced at the clock, I realized an hour had slipped by without me noticing. And that's when I noticed a reflection in the glass. Someone was there, standing behind me. My breath caught as I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. Nobody was there. Just the faded light of the break room illuminating an empty space. But I could still feel them, watching me. I knew then, I couldn't ignore this any longer. The hospital harbored secrets, and I was determined to uncover them. The following shift was just as nerve-wracking. I stepped inside the hospital, determination pushing me forward. I couldn't walk away from this. I needed answers. As I made my way to the nursing station, I tried to act normal. I checked in with coworkers, even laughing at a couple of their jokes. Inside, though, the dread was still there, clinging to me like a second skin. The laugh echoed in my mind, refusing to fade. When my supervisor called for me again, I braced myself. "Can you check on room 217? They asked, and my stomach flipped. I forced a nod, unwilling to show how terrified I truly was. With each step toward that door, my heartbeat picked up. I felt ridiculous, glancing around to see if anyone was watching. All I wanted was to get in and out. The door was partially ajar, and I hesitated, sweating slightly. "Just do it," I muttered under my breath. I pushed the door open, but this time the room felt different. The air was thick, charged. I stepped inside, scanning the area. There was no figure this time, but something felt off. The bed was neatly made, like it hadn't been touched, but the chair in the corner was turned, the same chair I was sure I'd found in a different position before. I approached cautiously, inspecting its angle. Then, I felt the cold breath on my neck again. I shivered, my skin crawling. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice quaking. The words felt pointless in the stillness of the room, but it was a reflex. Only silence answered, wrapping around me like a heavy fog. I turned slowly, half expecting to see the figure again, but nothing. Just the chair standing silently in the corner. That's when I saw something shifting in the shadows. I squinted hard, trying to decipher what was there. My heart raced as I caught a glimpse of something small on the floor. I approached carefully, each step a battle against my own fear. It was a toy, a broken little doll. Black button eyes stared up at me in a way that sent chills down my spine. "Who does this belong to?" I whispered, but the question hung in the air, unanswered. Before I could gather my thoughts, a sudden noise exploded behind me. I whirled around, adrenaline pumping through me. The sound had come from the hallway, a loud crash, followed by muffled voices. My instinct was to run, but curiosity rooted me to the spot. I stepped outside 217, the doll still clutched in my hand. The hallway was dim, shadows creeping around the corners. I tiptoed toward the source of the commotion, my heart pounding louder than ever. As I approached the nurse's station, I overheard snippets of conversation. Report of a missing patient from 212. Investigate the basement too. My breath hitched at the mention of the missing patient. That was a few rooms down. What was going on? My mind raced. Was this connected to what I was feeling? I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. This place was hiding something, and I was determined to uncover the truth. But as I stood there watching my co-workers work, a shadow flickered past me. Then it was gone. I felt my skin prickle. Something was definitely wrong, and I needed to know what. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to dig deeper, and whatever I found might change everything. I took a deep breath, trying to sort through my thoughts. The moment stretched in the dim light of the hallway, and I suddenly felt the weight of the doll in my hand. I couldn't shake the sense that it meant something important. I tucked it into my scrub pocket, resolved to examine it later. I stayed close to the nurse's station, listening intently, my heart racing with anticipation. The urgency in their voices made my palms sweat. "We need to check all the rooms for her," one nurse said. "She can't have gone far." Who were they talking about? My stomach dropped. I clenched my jaw, and for a moment, I felt paralyzed. I wanted to help but didn't know how. If a patient was in trouble, what if I could be the one to find her? "Hey, can I help?" I finally stumbled out, my voice unsteady. A few heads turned toward me, eyebrows raised, but the nurse who seemed to be leading the charge didn't waste time. "Keep watch here," she said, her tone clipped. "We need someone to stay in case she runs by." I nodded, my heart sinking. I wanted to make a difference, not just be a bystander. I glanced back toward room 217, an unsettling feeling stirring in my gut. As I considered what to do next, the lights flickered overhead. A low hum filled the air, and the somber mood in the hallway deepened. Is it just me, or are the lights acting strange? I muttered to no one in particular. "They do that sometimes," one of the nurses replied, her voice distant as she peered out the glass window. "Just a power thing." I shifted, unsure. But as I stared into the hallway, I caught sight of a figure down by room 212. The door was ajar. I squinted harder. It was a fleeting glimpse, but I could have sworn it looked like a woman in a white gown. My breath quickened. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice a hushed whisper. The nurses turned to look, but by the time they focused, the figure was gone. I felt a surge of frustration. "No, really. There was someone there." I insisted, pointing down the hallway. One of the nurses rolled her eyes. "It was probably just a shadow." "No. I'm serious." Before another word could come out, there was another loud crash at the far end of the hallway. This time, my heart jumped into my throat. What was that? The nurses immediately turned serious. With hurried whispers, they looked at each other and began moving closer to the sound. I fell in step behind them, urging myself not to panic. As we neared room 212, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. The door stood open, slightly swinging as though inviting us inside. The voices from earlier had quieted, and the only sound was the distant hum of overhead lights. "Check it out," one nurse said, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated. I wanted to back away. But something pushed me forward, a reckless urge to uncover what was happening. Just as I took a step closer, the lights flickered again, plunging us momentarily into darkness. I froze, feeling the shadows swirl around me. Then, when the lights flickered back on, my heart raced wildly. The figure was there again, just inside the room, fading like a whisper but unmistakably there. I gasped, and this time there was no denying it, I was terrified. "What's wrong?" one of the nurses asked, noticing my eyes wide with fear. I turned toward her, opening my mouth to speak, but all I could manage was a choked breath. Then, something shattered in the room, and I knew I had to find out what was going on before it found me. As shadows danced around me, I took a step forward, heart racing. The nurses exchanged glances, unsure of what to do. The air felt thicker, charged with tension. I didn't want to be the only one to see the figure, but it felt like nobody else was going to step up. "Let's just check it out," I said, surprising myself with the boldness in my voice. The other nurses nodded slowly. We approached the open door with cautious steps. The room inside was dimly lit, the flickering light creating an eerie ambience that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. "Stay close," one of them whispered, her eyes darting around. I nodded, trying to steady my breath. I peered into the room, my heart pounding. The figure hadn't completely vanished, it was still there, just out of reach. "Hello?" I called out tentatively, breaking the uneasy silence. The word hung in the air, unanswered. That's when I saw it, a broken mirror lying on the floor, glass shards reflecting the light in a chaotic pattern. The doll in my pocket felt heavier, almost like it was pulsing with a life of its own. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against its cool surface. "Look, it's a mess in here," another nurse said, gesturing to the overturned chair and scattered items. "What happened?" "I don't know," I admitted, stepping into the room. The walls felt like they were closing in. I scanned the area, half expecting to see the woman again, but instead I found an empty corner. Suddenly, a soft whimper came from behind the curtain. I jumped, my heart raced. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice cracking. The nurses all nodded, fear etched on their faces. I stepped closer to the curtain, unable to fight the pull of curiosity and dread. In that moment, I had a choice: pull the curtain back and face the unknown, or retreat with the others. "I'll do it," I said, the courage bubbling deep inside. I took a deep breath and yanked the curtain aside. My breath caught in my throat. Nothing was there. Just the bare, metal bed with white sheets hanging limply over it. But I felt something intangible hovering in the air around me. "See? It's just an empty bed," one nurse said, sounding a bit relieved. But I felt different. There was a chill that wrapped around me. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed it again, an outline forming near the door. My pulse quickened. "There!" I yelled, pointing. The figure materialized for just a moment, the white gown billowing like smoke before disappearing altogether. "What is going on?" one of the nurses cried, her voice tightening with fear. "We need to get out of here." At that moment, I realized I couldn't just leave. I had to understand what was happening. "Wait. We have to figure this out." I shouted, but they were already retreating, urgency driving their steps. Before I could follow, the lights flickered out again, drowning me in darkness. I felt panic rise, the hairs on my arms standing upright. This time, when the lights returned, I wasn't alone. The outline stretched closer, more defined, and I summoned all my courage. In the harsh glow, something fell from my pocket, the doll. It landed at my feet, its glassy eyes staring straight back at me. I bent to pick it up, and that's when I heard a whisper, "Help me." The voice was faint, yet it echoed loudly in my mind. My breath hitched, mingling with fear and uncertainty as I clutched the doll against my chest. I knew I couldn't turn away now. I had to know who or what was begging for help. The room felt suffocating. My heart thudded as I stood there alone, clutching the doll, its presence somehow grounding yet unsettling. "Help me," the voice lingered in my mind. Who was asking? Suddenly, the lights dimmed again, and a chill swept through the air. I shivered, hardening my resolve. I took a step back into the room, looking for the figure I'd seen. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of hospital machinery. I reached for the doll's dress, searching for some sort of comfort. "I can help you," I whispered, although I had no idea who I was speaking to. The doll felt oddly warm against my skin, which was unsettling yet comforting. Then, something flickered at the corner of my vision. I turned, and the figure reappeared, her face clearer now, ghostly features framed by the errant glow of the overhead light. My breath hitched. She looked familiar. As fear clawed at my insides, I forced myself to step closer. "What happened to you?" I asked loudly, hoping for an answer. Silence enveloped me, but I could feel her sadness, like a heavy fog pressing down. The faint wail of a nearby patient echoed through the hallway, a reminder that this was a hospital, and people were in need. But the figure drew me in, her sorrow intertwining with my own anxiety. "Help me," she repeated, the words curling around me like a vine, and then I remembered a patient from a few weeks ago. A woman who had come in with a desperate plea, her eyes wide with fear. She kept talking about her daughter. I had offered comfort, but I had no idea how serious her situation was. Had she passed? Was that why she was still here? Suddenly, the lights flickered again, strobing between dimness and brightness. In those flashing moments, I saw something strange. The walls of the room seemed to shift, revealing old photographs framed and dusty. In one, the woman stood smiling, holding a little girl's hand. I blinked hard, uncertain if I was imagining things. With a rush of determination, I reached for the doll, holding it up like a talisman. "Is this your daughter?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The figure nodded slowly, her expression morphing into an echo of pain. "Help me find her," she whispered, and the chill in the air intensified. The nurses were right to be afraid. I needed to leave, yet something within me pulled back toward her. "I can help you," I said again, feeling the weight of her unfulfilled request. I thought of the new lead I had uncovered, but I still had no answers. Before I could question my instincts, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, breaking the fragile connection between us. I turned abruptly, adrenaline coursing through me. "What was that?" I whispered to nobody in particular. My heart raced again as I felt the presence of the figure behind me, almost as if she was urging me to follow her. Just then, I heard the strange voice again, louder, more urgent. "Help me." Panic surged through me. The call for aid wasn't just the woman's anymore, it was a rallying cry. As I glanced back at her, she remained suspended in the shadows, waiting. I knew that somehow, answers lay beyond that door. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was coming next. The answers were just a step away, and I couldn't turn back now. I stepped out of that room, the chill of the doll's warmth still lingering in my hands. The hospital corridors stretched before me, dimly lit, shadows dancing as the lights flickered above. I didn't want to lose sight of the figure, but the urgent crash echoed louder in my mind, pulling me away from her plea. I rushed toward the sound, a mix of fear and curiosity driving my feet. "Where are you?" I muttered under my breath, not even sure who I was calling to. The floors creaked beneath me, every noise magnified in the otherwise still night. As I rounded the corner, I nearly collided with a nurse sprinting in the opposite direction. "What's happening?" I said, catching my breath. She shot me a bewildered look, eyes wide. "You shouldn't be here," she exclaimed. "There's been a disturbance. They think someone escaped from the locked ward." My heart sank. I barely processed her words. The idea of a patient escaping filled me with dread. The woman's voice echoed in my mind, a desperate cry still ringing, "Help me." Before I could think, the nurse hurried away, leaving me alone in the hallway. I glanced back toward the room behind me, conflict raging inside. The ghostly figure, her message still unfulfilled, beckoned me forward. I turned back to the darkened corridor ahead, swallowing hard. I couldn't ignore her anymore. This was about something bigger than just a broken hospital night. I had to find out who she was, a mother searching for her lost child. I slipped into a nearby storage room, pulling out my phone, hoping to find answers in the hospital's files. As I flipped through documents and old charts stacked in disarray, a sudden hiss of air made me jump. I scanned the room, breathless, but all I found were dusty boxes and old linens. Then, I heard it again, the soft whisper, "Help me." It was closer this time, sending cold shivers down my spine. I stepped cautiously toward the door, feeling like every breath was being held by invisible hands. Just as I laid my hand on the doorknob, another crash resonated down the hallway, startling me that I hesitated, torn between the urge to rush out into danger or to remain and face whatever was behind me. With a deep breath, I opened the door, peering into the dark hall. Then everything went dark. The lights cut out completely, leaving nothing but shadows. Panicking, I fumbled for my phone's flashlight, the soft beam slicing through the blackness. I took a tentative step, my pulse racing. The voice escalated, now a frantic plea that echoed off the walls, "Help me. It's too late." Just then, I caught sight of a figure at the end of the hall. My heart stopped. It was the woman. I could see her desperation now, her face twisted in anguish. My instinct screamed at me to run, but the link between us was undeniable. Before I could gather my wits, a loud thud reverberated from the other side of the corridor. I jumped, spinning around to face the source of the noise. Someone was coming. The fear surged as I realized I had to choose: help the woman or face whoever else was in the building. The choice hung heavy in the air. I needed to act, but my mind raced with uncertainty. Then, in the darkness, I saw something shift, a small figure darting past me, leaving a chill that made my skin crawl. I took a step forward, and as I did, I whispered, "I will help you." Then everything went black again. I blinked, trying to shake off the darkness that swallowed me whole. The air felt thick, heavy with an unsettling silence. My phone's flashlight finally flickered back on, and I quickly aimed it in the direction where I had last seen the woman. Nothing. Just empty hallways that stretched endlessly, their depths cloaked in shadow. My breath quickened. I could feel the weight of the silence pressing in from all sides. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling slightly. I waited, straining to listen for a response. The only sound was the faint hum of the hospital ventilation system. I turned slowly, searching for any hint of movement. That's when I noticed the door at the end of the corridor was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the darkness from inside. A chill ran down my spine. Was that where the woman had gone? I hesitated, battling my curiosity and fear. Based on the nurse's warning, should be fleeing, not investigating. But the echo of her desperate plea wouldn't let me leave. I stole forward, each step deliberate and cautious. My footsteps felt loud against the cold tile floor. Just as I reached the door, a sharp clang echoed from behind me. My heart leapt. I spun around, scanning the hallway, but it was still empty. Whoever had been causing the disturbances was elusive, slipping like quicksilver through the night. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open, wincing as it creaked on its hinges. Inside, I was met with a stark contrast. The bright, sterile light of the room revealed a stark and unsettling scene. Medical charts plastered the walls, and a single hospital bed was centered beneath a flickering fluorescent light. My eyes adjusted, revealing an array of medical equipment I knew too well: monitors, for stands, and all the tools that aided in saving lives. But it was the bed that captured my attention. There, in the bed, lay a bundle swathed in pale sheets. Instinctively, I walked closer, my heart racing with confusion and fear. When I reached the side, I cautiously pulled back the cover. I gasped. In the bed wasn't the woman I had seen before, but a lifeless child, eyes lightly closed, a doll resting on their chest. In an instant, I could see why the woman had been so desperate. Could this be her lost child? "Where are you?" I whispered into the stillness, hoping for a sign. Just then, a sharp sound: footsteps echoed outside the door, sending my heart into my throat. I quickly backed away, glancing toward the bright exit that bathed the room in stark light. The footsteps grew closer, and I could hear voices urgent and low. They were searching for something, or someone. My pulse quickened again as I glanced at the child and the doll. What was happening? Who were they after? As I quieted my breathing, I had to decide fast. Should I stay and risk being caught, or try to find an escape? The whispered warning of the woman echoed back in my mind, "Help me." Everything hinged on that moment. I turned back to the door, preparing to slip out just as the handle rattled. The handle rattled again, more forcefully this time. Panic coursed through me as I glanced back at the child. Time felt like it was slipping away, thick with dread. I couldn't just leave them. But what if whoever was out there saw me? I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding like a drum. The voices were clearer now, low and urgent. "We need to find her, before it's too late." The word sent a shiver right down my spine. Who were they looking for? Taking a chance, I leaned to the side and peeked through the narrow sliver of the door. Two figures moved down the corridor, flashlights dancing across the floor like restless spirits. I couldn't see their faces, but the urgency in their movements left little doubt the stakes were high. Adrenaline spurred me into action. I turned back to the hospital room and darted for the far corner, hiding behind the curtain that hung limp against the wall. I held my breath, the sound of my heartbeat loud in my ears. As their footsteps grew nearer, one of them called out, "She has to be here." The lights were on. "Check every room." I gritted my teeth, looking around for anything that could help me escape if it came to that. My gaze landed on a window high above the ground. But it was sealed tight, the only respite being the sliver of light pouring in from the door. Then I heard it, a soft whimper, just outside my hiding spot. I risked a glance, my pulse racing. A woman stood on the threshold where the two men had just been, her face hidden in shadows. I recognized her immediately. It was the woman from before. She looked frantic, her eyes wild and desperate. "Help me," she mouthed, though no sound came out. I felt an urge to reach out, to reassure her somehow, but that would mean exposing myself. Suddenly, the two men rounded the corner, their voices rising in urgency. "Check the rooms. She has to be here somewhere." I could almost feel the tension crackling in the air. The woman noticed them too. In a fleeting moment of decision, she darted into the room, and I barely stifled a gasp. I remained frozen in place, watching her, afraid of what might happen next. "What do we do?" she whispered, panic etched on her face. I weighed my options, the weight of my choice suffocating. "Just follow my lead," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We'll find a way out." But just then, one of the men shouted, "In here." I saw her. Everything fell silent. I could feel the woman's fear as she pressed closer, her breath catching in her throat. We knew we had only seconds before they burst in. I could see the exit down the hall, but the path was filled with danger. Everything was about to change. I took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. Just as the doorknob turned, I made a decision that would alter the course of this night forever. I pushed the curtain aside, stepping out into the light of the hospital room where the ominous whispers guided my feet. I felt an electrifying rush of adrenaline as I stood shoulder to shoulder with the distraught woman. "Come with me," I said, determination solidifying in my voice. "We can escape, but we have to move now." The urgency in my words seemed to pull her from her trance. Together, we darted toward the door just as it swung open, and there stood the two men, their faces flushed with urgency. "There she is!" one shouted, eyes wide with shock. With a surge of instinct, I grabbed the woman's hand and dashed into the hallway, ignoring the screams of my heart. The sound of their footsteps echoed behind us, closing in like a predator in pursuit. The exit was at the far end of the corridor, a bright beacon through the darkened maze of a night that felt never-ending. "Where do we go?" the woman gasped, fear evident in her gaze. "Just keep running," I urged, and together we bolted down the hallway. I focused on the flickering lights ahead, pushing all doubt away. But as we ran, I sensed the darkness around us thickening, a blanket of shadows billowing in the corners of my vision. I could hear the whispers growing louder, a cacophony of desperate voices mixed with the rush of my own breath. We reached the end of the corridor, skidding to a halt in front of the door leading outside. The chill of the night air beckoned us forward, a welcome relief from the suffocating tension inside the hospital. But before I could grasp the doorknob, a loud crash resonated behind us. It reverberated through the corridor, causing the walls to shudder. What was that? The woman cried, her face pale. Keep moving. I urged, adrenaline coursing my veins as I swung the door open, just as the two men's shouts echoed from behind, mixed with a frantic insistence, "You can't leave. We need to talk to her." "Who are they?" she gasped, panic rising in her voice. "Just keep running." We burst into the night air, tumbling into the cool embrace of freedom. I barely glanced back as we sprinted down the gravel path, my heart hammering in my chest. The sounds of the hospital faded behind us, replaced by the distant chirping of crickets and the rustle of leaves. For a fleeting moment, I believed we had escaped. But as we reached the parking lot, a sense of burial began to gnaw at my insides. Even beneath the stars, the weight of the unseen danger coiled tightly like a snake around my chest. What had we left behind? About to reach for my phone, the woman gripped my arm suddenly, her eyes wide. "We need to go back," she declared, a fierce determination igniting her voice. "I can't just leave them." "What are you talking about? We need to leave this place," I protested, bewildered by her desperation. "Those were the doctors. They're not my enemies. I just need to find my daughter. She's still there." Panic clustered within me like a storm as the shadows of uncertainty crept in. I was terrified of what lay ahead, of the unresolved sorrows haunting the halls of the hospital we had just fled. "You don't know what you're asking. I've seen things." It felt like a confession, uttered in the face of a danger I still didn't fully understand. The remnants of her past gleamed in her eyes, drawing me back toward my own fears. There was no denying her pleading gaze, and the weight of the doll still tucked inside my pocket, a living reminder of the pain we'd encountered. I felt caught between two realms, the living world outside and the torment still brewing within, but ultimately, it was the uncertainty of who was still there, pulling at my conscience, that made me hesitate. What if she was right? What if I was meant to help? As I looked into her eyes, torn between leaving for good or facing the unknown, I took a deep breath. "All right," I murmured. "But we do it together." We turned back toward the hospital, silence hanging thicker than the shadows that surrounded us. I still felt the ache of unresolved questions. Was it a ghostly call for help or merely the whispers of my mind? I carried those thoughts as we walked back into the night, where echoes of the past awaited us, and where the truth would remain forever intertwined in the fabric of what is real and what is not.